The sharp pain radiating from my calf abruptly woke me up. It was an agonizing sensation, as though my bones had been crushed and split apart. Fighting through the pain, I propped myself up and surveyed the deserted, silent street around me. The scene, so eerily familiar from my nightmare, was now vividly in front of me. Gradually, it hit me. I had been reborn. Reborn to the day of the accident. The one where the driver hit me and fled the scene. I lowered my gaze to the shattered watch on my wrist. In just 15 minutes, Ethan would appear at the corner of the crosswalk and carry me to the hospital. From that day forward, he would become my only salvation in a moment of despair. But this time, I didn't need him. I knew I wasn't going to die. With gritted teeth, I endured the excruciating pain and used my hands to push myself up. My palms scraped against the ground as I painstakingly dragged myself forward. Inch by inch, blood seeped from the gash in my leg, leaving a vivid trail on the cement. The scorching midday sun heated the pavement until it burned, making my head spin with dizziness. Yet, I forced myself to crawl forward. The only thought in my mind was that I had to do it over again. This time, I wouldn't let Ethan save me. In my past life, Ethan missed his chance to see Lauren one last time because he saved me. By the time he rushed to the airport from the hospital, Lauren had already boarded her flight overseas and cut off all contact with him. Their missed connection became his lifelong regret. Out of gratitude for saving my life, I stayed by his side, helping him build his empire from nothing. Over 10 years, I climbed from being an unknown actress to a top-tier star, becoming the highest-earning talent in his company. The night I won the Best Actress award, Ethan proposed to me in front of everyone, sliding a ring onto my finger. Shortly after we married, I had an accident on set. The safety wire suddenly snapped, and I plummeted from a great height. Ethan was the first to rush to my side, but he stopped abruptly, as if something had struck him, standing over me. His gaze was cold and devoid of emotion. "Elena," he said, "do you know what my biggest regret in this life is? Saving you and losing Lauren." Lauren. It had been years since I last heard that name. I thought Ethan, like me, had long forgotten her. But he continued. If we hadn't broken up back then, she wouldn't have married that scumbag abroad, wouldn't have been abused to death. Maybe I could have saved her. You know, I've hated you all these years. His voice carried a hint of restraint. Blood continued to pour from my nose and mouth as I weakly asked, "Then why did you stay with me?" The crowd around us grew, their panicked voices blending into chaos. Ethan didn't hear my question. Through the haze of blood clouding my vision, I stared at the ring on his finger and suddenly understood. Out of gratitude for saving my life, I worked tirelessly for 10 years, earning him the status he had today. Ethan hated me but tolerated it because I was profitable. He was a shrewd businessman. What I owed him, he had already taken back from me. I couldn't remember how far I crawled with my broken leg, only that I vaguely saw a figure and weakly called out for help before losing consciousness. Half conscious, I heard the sound of an ambulance again. In my past life, I died in the ambulance. But this time, I survived. When I opened my eyes, the smell of disinfectant filled my nose. I had just undergone surgery, and my calf was encased in a thick plaster cast. A nurse, while adjusting my foot, scolded my mom. Why didn't you give her a phone? If she could have called, she wouldn't have had to crawl so far looking for help. She nearly lost her life. My mom awkwardly smiled. She's still a student. I was afraid having a phone would distract her from her studies. The nurse frowned. She's in college, not high school. We saw her student ID. Just say it. You didn't want to spend the money. Look at what she's wearing compared to you. Other patients in the room chimed in agreement. My mother looked visibly embarrassed. Once she's discharged, I'll buy her a phone, she said awkwardly. The hospital staff, including doctors and nurses, helped me file a police report. The driver responsible for the hit and run was quickly located. A rich, drunk driving heir. In my previous life, his family not only paid for my medical bills but also compensated us with a large sum of money. Naturally, the compensation ended up in my mother's hands. At the time, she was dating Lauren's father. When I was discharged, my mother bought me a second-hand phone. She spent what could have gone toward buying me the latest model to make an international call to Lauren, who was studying abroad. After Lauren returned home, She often flaunted her new phone in front of me. My father had abandoned my mother when he was young, and because I resembled him, my mother was convinced I was an ungrateful burden. She was more willing to be kind to Lauren, who wasn't even her blood relative, than to care for me. It wasn't until many years later in my previous life that I accepted the fact my biological mother didn't love me at all. The 4 medication had painkillers and sedatives in it, and I soon felt drowsiness creeping over me. Eventually, I drifted off to sleep, half conscious. I suddenly heard Ethan's voice. Slowly, I opened my eyes before shutting them again. Ethan had brought some fruit and came to visit me. He asked my mother a few questions about my condition and then, to my surprise, inquired about Lauren's recent situation. Under the influence of the sedatives, my mind felt foggy as memories from my past life intertwined with the current scene. In my previous life, Ethan shouldn't have known about my mother's connection to Lauren's family at this point. Then I remembered, after Lauren's death in my previous life, Ethan would often get drunk and mumble, "If I could go back in time, maybe I could have saved her." Her death seemed to be his greatest regret. Now, his voice echoed in the hospital room, tinged with urgency as he questioned my mother about Lauren. It hit me like a bolt of lightning. Ethan had been reborn too, just like before. My mother signed a settlement agreement with the driver's family. However, because I, as the victim, firmly refused to accept the settlement, the drunk driving heir faced severe punishment. Without the compensation money, my mother and I had a serious falling out. She stopped visiting me in the hospital altogether, hiring a cheap caretaker instead. Meanwhile, one of the neighbor ladies often came to check on me. During her visits, she would inevitably bring up Ethan to all the neighbors. He was the brightest and most successful among our group of kids. Apparently, Ethan had given up his guaranteed spot in a top domestic graduate business program to apply for the same university abroad that Lauren was attending. His family wasn't wealthy, so for him to forego such an opportunity and spend all their savings to study at a low-ranked foreign school alongside Lauren, it was hard to understand his reasoning. But what did it have to do with me? In this life, I had nothing to do with Ethan anymore. After I was discharged, I used the last $50 in my pocket to take a few headshots at a photo studio near the hospital. Then, I found the email address of Blue Wing Talent Management online and sent in my resume. To my surprise, I received an immediate reply inviting me to an interview. Reading the email filled with quirky symbols, emojis, and anime-style text, it was hard to believe it had come from Lana, the future infamous Ice Queen agent in the industry. In my previous life, I had once asked her why she always looked so cold and detached whenever we met. She had taken off her sunglasses, rolled her eyes, and said, "Who the hell can smile after working so many damn jobs every day?" I'd had no comeback for that. But at this point in time, Lana had just graduated from college. Her gaze was clear, and she still exuded youthful enthusiasm for her work. When she saw me during our first meeting, she smiled like a teenage girl brimming with excitement. "Wow, I really hit the jackpot. A gorgeous girl like you actually sent in her resume." However, the moment her eyes fell on the bandages wrapped around my foot, her smile froze. "What happened to your foot?" she asked, her tone laced with concern. I smiled faintly and said casually, "I got hit by a car. It'll probably take about 2 months to fully recover." Lana froze for a moment and then asked, "Then why didn't you wait until your leg healed to come for the interview?" "Because your studio wouldn't survive 2 months," I said, half jokingly. In my past life, 2 months later, Lana's studio went bankrupt, and she was forced to take odd jobs. Not only that, but she also got tricked into signing a 10-year exploitative contract. It wasn't until that contract expired that she started over and rebuilt her career. When she opened her new studio, the first thing she did was try to sign me. At the time, my contract with Ethan's company was nearing its end, and I had been endlessly working on low-quality commercial films to generate profits for his company. Lana and I hit it off instantly and planned for me to join her studio as soon as my contract expired. But before that could happen, I died on set. Lana skimmed through my resume, her eyebrows furrowing as she looked me over. "Your resume says you can ride horses, perform martial arts, play the guzheng, and do classical dance. You didn't just make all this up for the interview, did you?" In my past life, I had indeed lied on my resume to secure roles, then scrambled to learn the skills in crash courses before shooting began. But this time, I wasn't bluffing. I shook my head. I'm not lying. I really can do all of that. Lana glanced at my bandaged foot and said coolly, "Fine. If you say so. Not like you can prove it now. Anyway." I took a deep breath and replied earnestly, "I can act, too. Want me to try out a scene?" Lana flipped through a few pages and handed me a script. I quickly memorized the lines and performed a short scene. Afterward, Lana stared at me, dumbfounded. "Wait, you're a finance major. How do you act better than trained drama students?" I coughed awkwardly and made up an excuse. Maybe it's because I did some theater performances back in school. Feeling a little guilty, I started flipping through the script in my hands. The screenplay was excellent. If it was brought to life, it would definitely be a hit. Lana's eyes sparkled with excitement. "You even know how to analyze scripts?" I smirked faintly. "I know a little bit of everything." As I turned to the final page, I froze when I saw the writer's name, Victor Hayes. My hand trembled slightly. In the future, Victor would become an internationally renowned director. But right now, he was just a small-time screenwriter. In my past life, I had tried several times to secure a role in one of his new films to transition my career, eventually landing a minor supporting role after many attempts. However, Ethan rejected the offer behind my back, claiming the pay was too low and the role unworthy of my status. The actress who replaced me went on to win Best Supporting Actress for that role and became a rising star overnight. Ironically, although Ethan had turned down the role, I became the target of media ridicule, labeled as short-sighted and a laughingstock in the industry. Lana quickly arranged an audition for me. Due to the film's low budget, there was hardly any competition for the lead role. Even with a limp, I managed to land the part. After the audition, Victor sighed. "You did really well, but we don't have enough funding to start shooting. The company is also buried in debt." He hesitated before continuing. "But there's a big company that's interested in the project. When they started auditioning actors for this script, Lana recommended me. I told you, this script is so good. There's no way the final film would be bad," she said confidently. However, in my past life, I had never heard of this movie. It turned out that Victor sold the script. The project was either shelved indefinitely or, worse, turned into a poorly made film that failed to make any impact. What a pity, I thought to myself. I lowered my voice and reminded Victor, "Aren't you worried that someone might butcher your script, turning it into something incomprehensible?" Victor froze for a moment. That shouldn't happen. Right. Why not?" I countered. "Just recently, a screenwriter friend of mine was in tears. The script he sold to Victory Studios was turned into a complete mess. Luckily, his name wasn't credited on the film, or he would have been humiliated." Lana glanced at Victor, whose face had gone pale. She asked softly, "You're not planning to sell this script to Victory Studios, are you?" Victor shook his head vigorously. "No, I'm not. I wouldn't sell it, not even if my life depended on it. The biggest obstacle to getting the film made was funding. Fortunately, Lana was incredibly skilled at securing investments. Victor shot a short segment of the film using the limited funds he had, and Lana took the demo reel to pitch to potential investors. Not long after, she successfully secured enough funding to greenlight the project. Filming was scheduled to start in 2 months, just in time for my leg to heal completely. Before heading to the set, I returned home to pack my things. Just like in my past life, my mother had sold our old house without even consulting me and was planning to move in with the neighbors. When I got home, I only took one thing, a stuffed doll that a kind neighbor had given me. As a child, my mother was often out late or didn't come home at all, and that doll was the only thing that kept me company at night. As I was carrying the doll down the stairs, I ran into Ethan. The last time I'd seen him, I was pretending to be asleep in the hospital bed. This was technically our first proper meeting since being reborn. In a community like ours, secrets didn't stay hidden for long. Word had already spread that Ethan had been expelled from school after getting into a fight over Lauren. However, after returning to the country, he and some college classmates started a company, making a significant amount of money within a month. When I got home, All the neighbors were praising him for being so accomplished. I avoided his gaze, walked past him without a word, and headed straight for the door. "Elena," Ethan suddenly called out, his voice warm. I don't think things between us were ever this distant. I didn't even pretend to acknowledge him. My footsteps faltered for just a second before I walked away without turning back. Lana, being the future star agent she was, managed to land me a few decent advertising deals even before the film premiered. My performance in those ads received positive feedback, helping me gain a small but growing following. It wasn't long before Lauren also returned to the country and debuted as an entertainer, signing with Ethan's new company. I remembered that in my past life, when I was just starting to gain fame, Lauren had also appeared in a few commercials, trying to enter the industry. However, her wealthy husband disapproved of her being in the spotlight, and she disappeared from the public eye shortly after, so it didn't surprise me that she was trying again in this life. Ethan was skilled at creating buzz, and Lauren participated in several variety shows under his company. Lauren quickly gained the title of the nation's first love, constantly trending on social media. Without even a single production credit, she was hyped as the next big thing. As her fame grew, so did her entourage. Now she had 2 or 3 assistants at her side at all times. I couldn't help but recall how, in my past life, when Ethan's company was just starting, there wasn't even a budget for an assistant. I had to do my own hair and makeup to save money. Looking at her now, the difference in treatment was crystal clear. Love or the lack thereof was painfully obvious. It wasn't long before I ran into Lauren backstage at a corporate event. From the start, she had always looked down on me, and now, standing before me, she resembled a peacock, her expression brimming with undisguised disdain. "Elena, you've done a few commercials. What makes you think you're qualified to attend an event like this?" she sneered. I smiled faintly. "Looks like you've been keeping an eye on me. You even know how many commercials I've done." Her expression stiffened momentarily before she plastered on a fake smile. "Oh, you didn't know? My boyfriend, Ethan, just started his own film company. My new show still needs a maid character. How about I ask him to cast you? You two were childhood friends, weren't you?" Her tone dripped with mockery. Her words deliberately stretched out to insult me. Lauren came from a wealthy family and had always looked down on people like me. In her eyes, the poor were inherently inferior. Even the role she offered me, a maid, was meant to humiliate me. She had only started dating Ethan after noticing I had a crush on him. Before I could respond, Lana's laughter rang out behind me. "Wow, this is something else. I've never seen someone cast an actor more experienced than themselves to share the screen. Elena is already playing a lead role in a film. Even if she agrees to play your maid, the audience will probably assume you're the supporting actress." Lauren scoffed coldly. "Do you even have the money or resources to claim to be a lead actress? Keep dreaming." One of her assistants chimed in. "These days, anyone can call themselves a movie star just by shooting a music video. Who knows what kind of film she's actually in?" Lana's fiery temper flared, but she took a deep breath and suppressed her anger. She glanced at me and muttered, Forget it. Forget it. An agent's behavior reflects on their artist's image. I can't just go around biting back at dogs that bark at me." At this stage, both Victor and I were still newcomers. Without a promotional team, the film we worked on had gained zero attention. Even after shooting was complete, Victor was currently busy with distribution logistics, trying to get the film into theaters. As much as I wanted to put Lauren in her place, I couldn't afford to cause a scene and risk tarnishing the reputation of the movie or my role as its lead actress. I took a deep breath, hooked my arm through Lana's, and said, "Let's go. Next time. Next time." As we walked away, their mocking laughter trailed behind us. To them, our retreat only confirmed their assumption that we were insecure. We hadn't gotten far when a staff member suddenly rushed toward us, panting, "Thank goodness you're still here. Ms. Elena." Lana stopped abruptly, visibly confused. "Wait, who did you mean by Ms. Elena?" The staff member caught his breath and nodded hastily. Yes, I mean Elena. I didn't know if she had time." The staff member explained enthusiastically, "We'd like to arrange an exclusive interview with Ms. Elena. Her new film has been receiving rave reviews during its preview screenings. Many seasoned critics have given it high praise. And there's already speculation that she'll win an award at the upcoming film festival. If we don't schedule with her now, we're worried she'll be too busy later." Just as they finished speaking, Lauren's assistant chimed in from behind with a sarcastic tone. "Are the two of you not done acting? Now you've even dragged in an extra. Why don't you keep going? Exaggerate a bit more and say she's already won Best Actress or something." The staff member froze for a moment, confused by the sudden interruption. "Are they talking about us?" they whispered. Lana, unfazed by the comments, broke into a wide grin. "Ignore them. People like that are just bitter. Jealousy is a sickness." Before long, I was led into a private dressing room to get styled. Once the door was closed, leaving only Lana and me inside, she finally dropped her composed demeanor and stomped her feet in excitement. "I can't believe my luck," she exclaimed. "My first client, and you're already on the rise. Did you see the way Lauren looked at you earlier? Looks could kill. She would have burned a hole through you. Once you're famous and start earning big, my dream of living a life counting stacks of cash every day will finally come true." I adjusted my hair in the mirror and replied calmly, "I've already experienced fame in my past life, so it doesn't faze me now. But knowing that most of the money I earn from now on will go into my own pocket does feel pretty good." My smile grew, and Lana joined in, her laughter contagious. She leaned closer. "So, what's the first thing you want to buy once you start making real money? A car or a house?" I thought for a moment. "How about an entire building? I can live off the rental income." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "A building? You've got some big dreams." In my past life, Ethan bought a building too, with a significant portion of the money coming from what I had earned. Now that I was free from him, every penny I made belonged to me. This time, I had a much better starting point. The film I starred in not only earned me the Best Newcomer award, but also became a surprise box office hit during the summer season. A low-budget suspense film had turned Victor into a rising name in the industry and cemented my status as one of the most sought-after new actresses. While my debut was a major success, Lauren wasn't content with playing supporting roles anymore. Ethan assigned her parts that had been breakout roles for other actresses in our past life, but none of her performances made an impact. Ethan, being reborn as well, used his knowledge from the previous timeline to amass a fortune through investments. To my surprise, this shrewd businessman poured an incredible amount of money into casting Lauren as the lead in a big-budget drama, even though she hadn't even mastered supporting roles. It was as if his infatuation had clouded his judgment entirely. Sitting next to me, Lana noticed my tense shoulders and gently patted me. "You know, the casting director for that drama reached out to you first. I saw the script, and it's actually really good. But, well, money talks in this industry. Don't feel bad. There are plenty of great scripts waiting for you." I looked up at her, smiling. Great scripts are like chocolate, sweet for people, but deadly for dogs. Lana stared at me, startled, and then burst out laughing. "Elena, I read a post online recently. It said you and Ethan were childhood friends and that you've been secretly in love with him all this time. They're even speculating that you're losing your mind over him being with Lauren. Is that true? When I was younger, I might have had a crush on Ethan, but since being reborn, I felt nothing for him. Growing up in a family devoid of love, it was easy for someone like me to mistake the kindness of someone pulling me out of the abyss as something deeper. Looking back now, back then, what I felt for Ethan didn't seem like love. Losing him didn't break my heart." I chuckled softly and said, "Ever since I went crazy, I've been feeling more sane than ever." As expected, Lauren's stiff, awkward acting wasn't enough to carry the lead role in a high-budget historical drama, despite being a beautifully crafted production and a multi-award-winning script. The show flopped spectacularly. All the money Ethan had painstakingly earned using his knowledge from his past life went down the drain. Even so, he managed to market Lauren as an A-list actress. But Lauren wasn't content being overshadowed by me. She argued with Ethan constantly. After I won the Best Newcomer award, I returned backstage. As I passed by a dressing room, I heard the sound of something being smashed inside, followed by Lauren's tearful voice. "You brought me here just to watch Elena win an award? To let her flaunt her success in front of me?" Ethan's voice was steady but tense. "I brought you here to meet Director Stone and the producers. In this industry, good opportunities lead to awards. Without them, No one wins anything. Look at Elena. She debuted as a film lead. And here I am, pulling strings just to get you a lead role in a TV drama. Not only did the show fail, but you're also being criticized non-stop. If you think I have so much power, then tell me how I'm supposed to get you a lead role in a movie. Lauren's voice cracked with frustration. If you were really capable, you'd make it happen. There was a loud crash, and suddenly the door swung open. Before I could step back, I found myself face to face with Ethan, holding my trophy. I adjusted my gown and started walking past him. Elena, he called out, stepping in front of me and blocking my path. You heard everything, didn't you? He asked. His expression conflicted. I met his gaze, smiling faintly. I was just passing by. Ethan raised an eyebrow slightly. Other people might not understand the subtext of what I said, but you should. Right. I let out a light, mocking laugh. Sorry, Mr. Carter. The dressing room's soundproofing isn't great, but I couldn't make out what you were saying. Don't play dumb, he snapped coldly. You debuted earlier than most. Your agent is Lana. Your director is Victor. And now you've won Best Newcomer. Do you know what that means? I smiled. It means I'm lucky. I didn't run into the wrong people along the way. Ethan's expression darkened, but I was too tired to entertain him any further. I stepped around him and entered the adjacent dressing room. The poor soundproofing worked both ways. I could still hear Lauren's hysterical screaming from next door. Lana pushed open the door and walked in, her face alight with curiosity. Who was talking to Ethan just now? Lauren's over there yelling about some vixen. As I removed my makeup in front of the mirror, I replied nonchalantly, no idea. Lana clicked her tongue. I really want to know who it was. Everyone else is gone, but Ethan's still standing there, staring after her like he's lost his mind. I froze mid-motion as I was removing my earrings. Just now, the only person who had spoken to Ethan was me. Was there something wrong with him? After that day, I became a thorn in Lauren's side. My mother, clearly making an effort, invited me to dinner with her and the neighbors at a hotel. She was dressed in an elegant cheongsam, her makeup impeccable, radiating the grace of a high society wife. It seemed that her dream lifestyle had softened her demeanor significantly. As soon as I stepped into the private dining room, she called me over to sit beside her. Elena, let me introduce you. This is Mr. Lin, and this is his daughter, Lauren. From now on, we'll be one family. I raised my eyes slightly, meeting Lauren's smug gaze head on. One family? Have you and Mr. Lin gotten married already? The smile on my mother's lips froze slightly. Not yet, but marriage takes time. You know, choosing the right date and all. I chuckled and got straight to the point. I'm guessing this isn't just a family dinner. What's the real reason you asked me here? My mother glanced at Lin Zun, who nodded subtly. She hesitated for a moment before speaking. Here's the thing. Haven't you always wanted to study abroad for your master's? Well, we've got a great opportunity for you. Mr. Lin is willing to sponsor your studies overseas. I picked up the teapot in front of me and poured myself a cup of tea. There's no need for Mr. Lin's help. I've already been accepted, and I even received a full scholarship. My mother's eyes lit up instantly. That's wonderful. It's such a great opportunity. It is, I replied with a faint smile, taking a sip of tea. I've always wanted to go abroad, to get far away from you. But now, I've found a new opportunity. I paused, glancing at Lauren. Did she mention it to you? The movie I starred in just won a Best Newcomer award. Normally, if I spoke to my mother like this, she'd slap me without hesitation. But today, for some reason, she remained composed and calmly tried to reason with me. Elena, our family has no resources or connections. How could you possibly make it as an actress in the entertainment industry? Studying abroad is a much better choice. I smirked. If that's the case, why did Lauren give up studying abroad and fight tooth and nail to break into the entertainment industry? Lauren's face turned pale, and she slammed her hand on the table as she stood up. Elena, you're just bragging about starring in a low-budget film. What gives you the right to act all high and mighty? I raised an eyebrow and smiled mockingly. Against you? With your terrible acting? I don't even see you as competition. You, Lauren stammered, her voice trembling with rage. but she couldn't form a coherent sentence. Lindsay gently patted her hand to calm her, then turned to me. Lauren does have a bit of a temper, but she's not entirely wrong. A girl without connections isn't suited for a chaotic industry like entertainment, full of unspoken rules. If it's money you want, I can give you $1 million. Just stay out of Lauren's way and stop competing with her for roles and resources. So that's how you've always been, I said with a cold smile, turning to my mother. Whenever Lauren faces a problem, you throw money at it to fix it. The whole reason you invited me here today is to make me step aside for Lauren. I leaned back in my chair, my gaze icy. I heard Mr. Lin's business hasn't been doing well lately. Offering $1 million must have been tough. But if you're willing to give me $1 billion, I might consider it. Linzion's face darkened, and he covered his mouth as he coughed violently. My mother hurried to his side, patting his back, before turning on me, pointing a trembling finger at my face. You ungrateful little brat. If this had happened in the past, her scolding would have crushed me. My emotions might have fluctuated before. But now, watching my mother fiercely defend two people who had nothing to do with her, all I could feel was amusement. I couldn't hold back and let out a laugh. Mom, do you honestly believe you're marrying into high society? He's only interested in how gullible you are. I paused and added sarcastically. What's next? Are you going to threaten to cut ties with me? Don't bother. I won't make you say it. Once I'm gone, don't bother reaching out. I don't have time to waste on this family. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. At the doorway, I stopped and turned back. Oh, and one more thing. You said I was competing with Lauren for roles and resources? Have you lost your minds and your eyesight? Her new drama tanked because her acting is so terrible. It's become a laughingstock. The ratings are abysmal, and they can't even recoup production costs. Who's hiring her now? She doesn't even qualify to compete with me. Calling it a competition is a joke. Lauren completely lost it, shrieking as she lunged toward me. But I slammed the door in her distorted, furious face and walked away. Lauren and I debuted around the same time, so comparisons were inevitable. My first film earned me a prestigious Best Newcomer award, while she, due to her poor acting skills, failed to capitalize on what should have been a breakout role in a high-budget drama. She became synonymous with wasted resources. A proud woman like Lauren couldn't handle being overshadowed at every turn. Not long after, the internet became flooded with smear campaigns against me. One clip stood out. A shaky, blurry video where I appeared to viciously shove Lauren's head into a roadside ditch. The video quickly went viral, turning Lauren into a fragile victim. Her agent posted a statement claiming that Lauren had suffered from bullying during her school years, and that the relentless online hate had triggered a relapse of her depression. Sympathy for Lauren skyrocketed, and she gained a wave of new fans. Meanwhile, paparazzi captured frequent images of Lauren with a gentle, handsome man by her side. Their striking appearances in the photos quickly drew a following of ship fans. Soon after, Lauren posted online, confessing that Ethan had been the one to help her through her darkest days, and officially confirming their relationship. Overnight, the internet exploded with praise for their fairy tale romance. Lauren's failing career was suddenly reignited, while I became the target of relentless online attacks due to the bullying scandal. The situation worsened when someone leaked that I had once secretly had a crush on Ethan. Old notes and letters I had written to him during my teenage years were posted online. The narrative shifted. I was now painted as someone bitterly jealous of Lauren and consumed with hatred for her. In their love story, I became the villainous ex, the cruel antagonist whose sole purpose was to disrupt their happiness. My reputation hit rock bottom. I lost countless job opportunities. Even the mockery Lauren had previously faced for her bad acting was now twisted into a narrative of resilience, with netizens claiming it wasn't her fault, it was all Elena's doing. Comments flooded in. Elena's so awful. She bullied Lauren in school, and now she's harassing her online. This toxic woman needs to be banned from the entertainment industry. Throw her in jail. Thank goodness Ethan's always been by Lauren's side. Otherwise, how could she have survived all this? In her latest interview, Lauren shed her usual arrogance, replacing it with a fragile vulnerability. Her teary, delicate demeanor tugged at viewers' heartstrings. Ironically, her performance on reality shows was far better than her acting in dramas. After watching the interview, I issued a simple public statement. In it, I denied ever bullying Lauren and addressed the rumors about my supposed crush on Ethan, stating that it was all in the past. I haven't been in contact with Ethan for a long time. I wrote, "Our relationship is that of strangers." After posting the statement, I put my phone down and focused on my work. At the time, I was filming in an isolated desert location. My only priority was to block out the chaos of the outside world and immerse myself in the project. We wrapped up shooting late that night, under a fragmented moonlight that lit up the barren landscape. As I made my way back to the hotel, I pulled out my phone to check for messages. A series of missed calls from an unfamiliar number lit up the screen. Moments later, the phone buzzed again. The number called again. I hesitated for a moment before answering, and Ethan's voice came through. "Elena, you've got some nerve, blocking my number like that." I replied coldly, "I told you, we're just strangers now." He let out a mocking laugh. "Strangers? We were married in our past life, and now we're strangers? How absurd. Do you remember how well we did in our last lives? And now, you're disgraced, and I'm nearly bankrupt. Isn't that funny?" I looked up at the pale full moon in the sky and smiled faintly. "Actually, I think getting another chance at life has been pretty great." Ethan seemed drunk. He laughed along with me. "You're in such deep trouble right now, and I'm the only one who can help you. We could work together again, just like before." I cut him off. "Ethan, the thing I'm most grateful for after being reborn is not having anything to do with you anymore. Even if I'm forced to leave the entertainment industry, I'll never sign with your company." There was a pause before he spoke again, his tone tinged with bitterness. "Elena, can't we start over?" I suddenly realized what he meant. He wasn't asking me to sign with his company. He wanted to start a relationship again. I laughed coldly. "Ethan, you're drunk." "I'm not drunk," he said, his voice hoarse. "I've never been more clear-headed in my life." "That just makes it more disgusting," I said, slowing my speech deliberately. "Ethan, don't make me sick." A month later, filming for the movie wrapped up. Lana came to pick me up from the set, dark circles under his eyes as he stared at me accusingly. "How long are you planning to let this bullying scandal drag on?" he demanded. "If this keeps up, the movie won't even make it to release. You've poured all your money into this project." I smiled at his concern. "What? Worried about me? Didn't you invest all your savings too?" He sighed deeply. "If I lose my money, I can always work and earn it back. But if you leave the industry, what will you live on? Look at Ethan. He lost his money, and Lauren dumped him." I opened my phone, and the top trending topic was Lauren's public announcement of her amicable breakup with Ethan. The comments were filled with regretful fans. Lana leaned closer and lowered his voice. "There's no such thing as a fairy tale romance. I heard from a makeup artist friend that Lauren left him for a wealthy businessman." I chuckled. So she dumped him. No wonder Ethan was acting crazy and calling me that night. Not long after, Ethan's film company, which he had built for Lauren, declared bankruptcy. Lauren quickly signed with the new agency, but her first project with them didn't go smoothly. Rumors spread that she clashed with the director, constantly demanding script changes and more screen time. The director eventually kicked her off the set. Without Ethan, there was no one to cater to her whims. With no roles and no work, she announced a temporary hiatus from the industry and married the businessman. After Lauren's engagement, my mother called me unexpectedly. "A girl running around working all the time. How much can you even earn? Look at Lauren. She's smart. She married into a wealthy family while she's still young. And your scandals from school are all over the internet. How are you even going to stay in the entertainment industry? Good thing Mr. Lin found you a match from a well-off family," my mother said smugly. I let out a cold laugh. "Just say it. How much dowry money are you getting?" My mother instantly flew into a rage. "Elena, what kind of thing is that to say? I've worked so hard to plan your future, and you think I'm doing it for money?" I pulled the phone away from my ear to escape her sharp, shrill yelling. When her voice finally faded to the point I could barely hear it, I brought the phone back. "Let me ask you something," I said evenly. "Do you really believe it was me who bullied Lauren?" "There's no believing or not believing about it," she snapped. "The video of you shoving her into the ditch is all over the internet. After the scandal broke, the people around me, those who actually knew me, didn't believe I was capable of such a thing. Lana stuck by me, handling the PR and managing the relentless public backlash. Victor, too, decided to continue working with me on his second film. But my mother, she was the first to call, screaming at me for ruining her new family and demanding I go to the Lin family to kneel and apologize. To me, this so-called biological mother wasn't even worth considering a stranger. I no longer felt the need for her approval, nor did I care about any fabricated notions of familial ties. Without another word, I hung up and tossed my phone onto the couch beside me. As I sat back, my eyes caught a notification in the corner of my laptop screen. A long-awaited email had finally arrived. My fingers trembled slightly as I clicked it open, recognizing the sender's name, Dawn Hsin. She had been my best friend in high school. Dawn had transferred schools in our sophomore year, and after that, we lost touch. The email invited me to meet her at a tea shop near our old school. When I arrived, it was still before the school's dismissal time, so the shop was quiet, with only the two of us there. She placed a strawberry bubble tea in front of me before sitting across the table. In a soft voice, she said, "I'm sorry, I haven't reached out to you all these years." I held the bubble tea in my hands, looking at her. Her once round cheeks had thinned out considerably. She looked much slimmer than I remembered. I took a sip of the tea. It was my first sweet drink in ages, but the sweetness left an oddly bitter taste in my mouth. "It's me who should apologize," I said. "I didn't understand what you were going through back then. I shouldn't have argued with you. I should have talked to you more." She shook her head, her voice trembling. "It was me. I gave up our friendship for money. I lost my best friend because of it." "Dawn," I said, lifting the cup in my hand and sniffing back tears. "Let's make up." Our cups clinked together mid-air, and we smiled at each other. Back in high school, we had a massive argument one evening after a late study session. It was outside the same tea shop. That day, I had snatched a phone from one of Lauren's minions. On the phone was a video of them bullying Dawn. I had said to her, my voice trembling with anger, "I finally have evidence of them harassing you. We'll go to the police and make sure they get what they deserve." But Dawn had looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "Let it go," she murmured. "You're afraid of their retaliation?" I demanded. "They only pick on the weak. After I shoved Lauren's head into the ditch last time, they didn't dare mess with you anymore. I'll protect you." "Elena," she said quietly, "I'm transferring to another school next semester. Lauren's dad already paid me compensation for what happened. I don't want to deal with this anymore. I don't want to pursue this anymore. I took their money." Dawn's voice trembled, and her words felt like a slap. I stared at her, disbelief turning into rage that made my whole body shake. "How could you take their money? Did you forget how they bullied you?" Her eyes turned red as she looked at me. "It was my choice. I'm sorry. I'm not worthy. You've been so good to me, but I don't deserve a friend like you." I lowered my gaze to my torn school uniform, ripped during the scuffle, and felt like a complete fool. After that day, Dawn never came back to school, and I never saw her again. The next time I heard about her, it was too late. She had taken her own life. That was when I found out why she accepted the compensation from Lauren's father. Her mother had been diagnosed with cancer, and she needed the money to pay for her treatment. Over time, the psychological toll of everything she'd endured led her to severe depression. And one freezing winter night, she ended her life. The biting wind that night was as cold as the guilt that gripped me when I learned the truth. I stood frozen, unable to process it all, regret flooding every corner of my heart. Why had I been so harsh during our last conversation? Why didn't I chase after her? Ask more questions? Even without her contact information, why hadn't I tried harder to find her? When I was reborn, the first thing I did was look for her. I walked on to the bus stop. She paused, turned back, and gave me a small smile. "I read all your emails. You still write the same silly stuff about seeing a bird in the morning or what you had for lunch. You wasted all that effort teaching me how to write essays." Feeling a little embarrassed, I laughed. "I thought you didn't read them." "You never replied." "I read them all," she admitted. "I just wasn't in a good place back then. I didn't know how to respond." She smiled again. Her crescent-shaped eyes filled with warmth. But after reading your emails, I started taking my medication on time and following my treatment plan. I'm doing much better now. I entered my phone number into her phone and said, "You should get a WeChat account. Text me if you ever feel like chatting, even if it's just a few words." She took her phone, slid it back into her bag, and asked, "Why didn't you explain yourself about the bullying allegations? You don't seem like someone who'd just sit back and take it." Before I could reply, she spoke again. "My therapist says avoiding things won't help. I need to face my fears and overcome them. Do you still have the videos from that phone? I want to press charges." I had hoped Dawn would change her mind back then, so before returning the phone, I made copies of all the videos. I'd kept the evidence all this time but hadn't used it, fearing the renewed public attention might worsen her condition. I never expected that my silence would make people think I couldn't defend myself, leading to an avalanche of false rumors and fabricated scandals. Lana mentioned something strange about Ethan the other day. Apparently, Ethan had been desperately trying to find people to suppress the rising heat around the scandal. But by this point, the situation had spiraled out of control. Lauren kept throwing money to keep my name trending on social media, aiming to crush me. When she couldn't elevate herself by stepping on me, she decided to destroy me entirely. After returning home, I issued another statement. In it, I explained that the video showing me pushing Lauren's head into the ditch was taken completely out of context. What I did was in self-defense, retaliating against her bullying. The comments section was immediately flooded with hired bots. "Elena's storytelling skills are top-notch. What a load of nonsense. This bully is now trying to paint Lauren as the aggressor? Just quit the industry already. She's a mad dog lashing out before her inevitable downfall. Who's even buying this story? Delete your statement before Lauren sues you for defamation." A few former classmates from high school, who knew the truth, tried to defend me in the comments. However, their words were quickly buried under an avalanche of hateful replies. Worse, there were even fake accounts claiming to be my classmates. Their fabricated stories cemented my reputation as the high school bully. Lies, repeated often enough, started to sound like truth. In an effort to salvage my reputation, Lana posted my prestigious university diploma and various academic and extracurricular awards I had won during high school and college. But it didn't help. My public image had reached rock bottom. Offers for projects and events dried up, leaving me with no work. I spent my days sleeping in, unaffected on the surface, though Lana began to wonder if I was secretly a capybara reincarnated, given my calm demeanor. In reality, I wasn't calm. I had simply lived through enough ups and downs in my past life to understand that panic and anxiety solved nothing. If anything, resting and saving my energy was a far better use of time. I was jolted awake one afternoon by a call from Lana. "Babe, get online right now. You've been vindicated." I sat up and opened my phone, pulling up the trending news. It was the full version of the bullying video. The clip began with Lauren trapping Dawn in a secluded alley. She slowly walked up to Dawn and pressed a lit cigarette against the back of her hand. Her entourage then grabbed Dawn, ripping at her clothes. Just as they held her down, I burst onto the scene, looking like I'd lost my mind. Without hesitation, I grabbed Lauren's head and shoved it into the muddy ditch. Only then did her lackeys release Dawn. The person filming began to panic and warned us. "Do you know who Lauren's father is? He's the school's biggest donor. Reporting this to the school won't help you." I stared them down coldly. "If the school won't do anything, then we'll go to the police." Lauren, her face now smeared with mud, screamed hysterically, "Do you even have evidence? You poor losers can't afford a lawyer. I can just send out a few text screenshots and blurry photos, claim she's broke and turning to prostitution, and ruin her life. Let's see who gets destroyed first." I hadn't expected Dawn to upload the video to the internet when she decided to take legal action against those who had bullied her. Shortly after the video went live, Dawn sent me a short WeChat message. "I shouldn't have felt ashamed in all of this. Those who manipulate public opinion will eventually be destroyed by it." As Dawn predicted, the tide of public opinion quickly turned against Lauren. In her attempt to force me out of the industry, she had blown this incident into a massive scandal. Now, the backlash she had tried to avoid came crashing down on her. The truth was out, and the narrative had flipped. Lauren could no longer maintain her harmless, innocent facade. Shortly after Dawn filed a lawsuit against her. Her assistant exposed her for tax evasion. The day the police took Lauren in for questioning, my mother showed up at my company, looking frantic. Elena, Lauren's fiancé, isn't willing to help cover her tax penalties. Your new film is doing so well at the box office. Could you lend her some money to get through this rough patch? I picked up the tea in front of me, but instead of handing it to her, I took a sip myself. Mom, sometimes I think you're quite kind-hearted. Let me ask you, though, when I was nearly forced to leave the industry because of her lies and slander, did you ever speak up for me? Her expression froze for a moment. I didn't know she was the one behind all that at the time. Elena, Lauren called me from the detention center yesterday and asked me to apologize to you on her behalf. She says she knows she was wrong. To err is human. To forgive divine. I scoffed. I don't believe for a second that someone like Lauren would genuinely feel remorse. I only believe in one thing. Facing consequences is the only way to atone for wrongdoing. I smiled faintly. Too bad. Mom, I'm not as kind and forgiving as you. I won't help this time. She looked confused. I'm only asking you to forgive Lauren, not to help me. I said nothing, just kept smiling as I signaled security to escort her out. Not long after, I saw on the news that my mother had been arrested by the police. She had been tricked. Lin Xuan had set up a company in her name, had her sign fraudulent project contracts, and then used the stolen funds to maintain the illusion of the Lin family's success. Despite all this, it wasn't enough to stave off the Lin family's bankruptcy. When the company collapsed, Lin Xuan jumped off the rooftop of his office building, leaving my mother with a mountain of debt and charges of fraud. She had thought she'd finally found someone she could rely on for the rest of her life. But in the end, she was trapped in the cage he built for her. As for Ethan, after seeing Lauren's true colors, he seemed to lose his mind. Instead of focusing on making money, he directed all his efforts toward me. He rented out all the flower gardens near my home and filled them with my favorite flowers. I had once mentioned, after we got married in my previous life, that I wanted to plant flowers in the garden of our villa. He had rejected the idea back then, claiming he was allergic to pollen. I had no intention of meeting him, thinking he'd give up soon enough. He was never known for his patience. To my surprise, he waited downstairs outside my apartment for more than 2 weeks. One evening, as I returned home, he called out to me from behind. Elena, I need to talk to you. Annoyed, I turned around. He stood there, staring at me for a long time before speaking slowly. After you fell from the wires during filming, I didn't abandon you. I died in the ambulance while taking you to the hospital. I met his gaze, my eyes cold. I was conscious then. I know that when the accident happened, you shielded me. The streetlight's glow reflected in his dark eyes. His voice was soft as he said, Elena, I'm not entirely unforgivable. I know I wronged you, so I've assembled the best production team for Awakening. You won't turn this down, will you? Awakening was the film that won me the Best Actress award in my past life. It was also the project I poured the most passion into. If I had the chance to star in it again, I wouldn't say no. I smiled faintly. You know me well. I won't turn down Awakening, but I will turn you down. I lifted my gaze and met Ethan's dazed expression. In a soft voice, I asked, did you secure the rights to the Awakening novel? The author has been very busy lately, he replied. It'll take some time. No need to wait. I interrupted. This time, it won't be as easy for you to get the rights as it was in the past. You might not have noticed before, but the author's real name is Dawn Hsin. Ethan's fists clenched tightly, and he stood silently for a long moment before forcing a bitter smile. Elena, I've lost this gamble, and once again, you've won. I didn't reply. Turning away, I headed toward my apartment building, but before I could take another step, his hand grabbed my wrist, stopping me in my tracks. I turned back to see his reddened eyes staring at me. Elena, he rasped, his voice breaking. Why don't you want me anymore? I just made one wrong choice. That can't be unforgivable. I smiled faintly. It took being reborn for me to realize the truth. The reason I cared for you before was because you saved my life. But now, there's nothing between us. No connection. No feelings. His voice softened. Elena, I regret it. I truly regret it. I let out a cold laugh. I heard Lauren and her wealthy boyfriend broke up. She's beyond saving. Maybe you can go redeem your white moonlight instead. Yanking my wrist free from his grip, I slapped him hard across the face. What you're doing now constitutes harassment. If it continues, I'll call the police. After that night, I didn't see Ethan again. Occasionally, though, I'd hear news about him. Word spread that he had made a fortune and transformed into a rising star in the business world. After being released from prison broke, Lauren latched onto him, refusing to let go. Rumor had it that she had dirt on him and used it to coerce him into marrying her. The story ended in tragedy. While driving, Ethan tried to wrest a USB drive from Lauren's hands, causing him to lose control and veer into a roadside river. Lauren, unable to swim, drowned. Ethan, however, managed to save himself and climb ashore. When her body was recovered, she was still clutching the USB drive tightly. The drive's contents were restored, revealing evidence of Ethan's financial crimes. His ill-gotten fortune quickly unraveled, and he was arrested and imprisoned. Despite being behind bars, he kept requesting to see me. I instructed his lawyer to tell him, "We're nothing more than strangers. I'll never see him again." By the time Dawn secured the rights to Awakening for me, I had just wrapped filming on a TV series and was already diving into my next project. Just like in my past life, the film received widespread acclaim after its release, and I earned the Best Actress award for my performance. Backstage at the awards ceremony, Dawn ordered me a strawberry bubble tea. By then, he was already on a plane heading abroad. In my previous life, Dawn hadn't lived to see this film's premiere. This time, he told me it brought the brave and resilient girl he once knew back to life, giving him the courage to start over. He planned to pursue his education abroad, something he hadn't been able to complete before dropping out due to bullying. I set the trophy down and cradled the cup of bubble tea as I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. Night had fallen, and the last trace of the sunset had disappeared over the horizon. Neon lights lit up the city in vivid, dazzling colors. Through the glass, I watched as a few snowflakes drifted gently down, their purity and chill marking the season's first snowfall. The snow fell thicker and faster, blanketing the city in white. A few delicate flakes floated in through the slightly open window, landing softly in my palm. Cold, clean, and fleetingly beautiful. Slowly, the snow melted. After the harsh winter, my spring would undoubtedly arrive as promised.